Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing late Thursday morning. Joining us from Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN headquarters. This is a good trick, Bontemps, because last night you were in Cleveland. It's not even noon yet and you're in Bristol. And I know that it's hard to get to Bristol. It's Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
No more. He lives no other commentary on that. He just lets it go.
What do you want me to say? I'm a travel whiz. What can I say?
All right. Joining us from Dallas, Texas, where I'm hoping when this podcast posts, Bontemps, he just sent me a video from outside of his house.
Oh, he sent it to both of us. I saw it.
Oh, that's right. He did. There is a healthy snow dropping. I am supposed to fly to Dallas in a couple of hours to go to the Cotton Bowl on Friday. Go Buckeyes. And I've been talking to MacMahon all week because this is like, people are like, this could be a historic storm. My flight is still on time. Band MacMahon, will you be there to help me get out of the airport and take me to safety if my plane can land?
Howdy, partners. Hell no, I will not be. And I've alerted my boss that I'm probably going to pull a DeAndre Ayton tonight and be snowed in. The Blazers are playing the Mavericks at the American Airlines Center. And frankly, fellas, I don't necessarily know that the Blazers against the Luka and Kyrie-less Mavericks is a matchup worth me risking my life for. So I think I'm going to just hunker up on the old couch and watch that one from home.
You still got that shiner on your nose from getting hit by the Uber. You don't need to be falling down on the ice and snow and hurting yourself again. So it's hard to argue with that take.
I don't need to pull a Bontemps to the White House and have like a broken.
That is true. That is true. Don't need that either.
Listen. You taking these butt crack of dawn flights really makes the rest of us look bad, especially those of us who have a policy that you can't take a flight before the double-digit AM hours. So I'm not real happy that you're sitting there in Bristol with your little sport coat on. Hey, boss, look at me. Look how hard I work. I covered a big game last night.
And it was a big game, and that's where we're going to start. I know that it'll be Friday morning for a lot of people, or even afternoon, or even the weekend when they hear this, and it'll be a couple days old. But we cannot let that go past that Thunder Cavs game.
You mean we have to talk about Cavs Corner after the massive Cavs?
The Cavs Corner has been expanded to Cavs half court because
we gotta come up with some kind of Thunder thing too, because we will be talking a lot of Thunder throughout this season.
Nothing can eclipse Cavs Corner, buddy. There's one corner on this pod.
Hey, the Thunder couldn't eclipse Cavs Corner last night.
No, they couldn't.
And let me tell you, the question of elite offense versus elite defense, the elite offense won that one, despite the fact that Donovan Mitchell had a tough night. I mean, if you'd have told me Donovan Mitchell was going to have that shooting line,
3 of 18,
16, 3 of 16,
felt like 18.
If you said, "Hey, Donovan Mitchell's 3 of 16," the question would have been, how much did the Thunder win by? For the Cavs to put up 129 points against by far the best defense in the NBA with Donovan, and I'm not just going to say he had an off night. Like, listen, Lou Dort has something to do with that for sure, but with Donovan having that night, that's impressive.
Yeah, Bontemps, this game. First off, in my view, there was no losers in this game. I mean, I know that
100%
that the streak is technically finally over. It was actually over about 3 weeks ago, but whatever. It's still impressive.
There's a little bit of justice, I would say, in the team that did lose a few weeks ago, losing again, even though it's their only 2 losses since December 1st. But
we'll say this, you guys.
Then there was another one that started, but either way,
yes, for sure.
You guys you weren't alone. I got mocked a little bit for my call for the Cavs to try to win the NBA Cup. They stumbled against the Hawks. They didn't deserve to get in. They didn't earn their way in. The Hawks did, but this was the kind of NBA Cup final, that I was, kind of hoping for.
Yeah.
So no banner is going up in Cleveland, but it was it was the teams that, were playing the best.
There might be a banner, just not for the Cup.
No, the banner is first to 32 wins in 2025.
There you go.
I tell you what, though, 32-4. It's like Jalen Williams.
73 win pace.
Yeah, J-Dub said after the game, like, dude, 32-4. Like, you don't just kind of fluke your way to that record. That is like you said, 73 win pace. This is a historic season so far for the Cavaliers. Geez, and Evan Mobley last night, my gosh.
We talked a lot on this podcast about the need to talk about teams like the Thunder and teams like the Cavs and hype up games like this, right? And the way the last few days went for the league, I think couldn't have gone better for the product and for the league as a whole. These teams came into this game with 2 days off before the game. They clearly both really wanted the game. They tried to talk about it being a regular game, but admitted it was an elevated game beforehand. You saw the way they played. You saw the way they talked about it afterward. Everybody involved understood the importance of the game. Our company and the league spent the last 3 days talking about this game. We had Jared Allen on TV. We had Darius Garland on TV. I did a hit at the top of the 6 o'clock Sports Center. And
we sent Bontemps to Cleveland.
I went to the game. They had 19 different elements on Sports Center about the game going into the 7 o'clock game. Like, we treated it like a historic
I was so
game
excited to talk about it on Sports Center. I showed up an hour early.
You did.
I screwed up the time zones
once again screwed up the time.
I showed up for Sports Center and like, you're on in an hour.
I think you were. I think it was mostly, because it was the Cavs. But
I just want you to know, I showed up. I want to be clear. I showed up for my hit on the 2 o'clock Sports Center, which means it starts at 2 o'clock. I showed up for the hit at 1:30.
1:30 Eastern time, by the way,
Yeah,
which means
we're always
12:30
talking
Central
East.
time.
We're always
just I
talking
know,
East.
just so
I'm
the
not always
listeners
thinking
know.
in East, but I'm always talking East.
So when I show up at my Sports Center hits, they're like, we're going to have you on in the playoffs. So don't
Yes.
feel bad.
But look, and then after all that, the game was incredible and went right down to the end and was an awesome product and was a perfect showcase of high-level basketball and what we all enjoy watching. So,
yes,
like you said, the league was a huge winner. Both teams were winners out of this game. There's a ton to talk about in the game, but going into the game, being there, it felt like a late-stage playoff game from the energy around it. And everybody involved basically was like, look, I just hope it's a really good game because we spent a lot of time talking about it and it deserves to be a good product. And that was as good a regular season game as I've ever been at. The only one I can really think of that was in the same ballpark was the Warriors-Cavs Christmas Day game in the same building back in 2016. But
The
there's a
original Cajones Factor game when Kyrie hit the game winner.
Yes. I mean, there's a handful of games you could compare it to, but it was unbelievable stuff from start to finish. It was great.
I'm going to sound like a stick in the mud old man here, but
That's unusual.
I don't care. The home team wore white. The road team wore the color. They played on their natural court. They had 2 days off before the game. The teams deployed everybody and absolutely deeply cared about the outcome.
And treated it like a playoff game. We're making adjustments mid-game. We're tweaking stuff before the game. It was high-level stuff.
By the way, I'm not saying they should only shoot set shots. The Cavs shoot a ton of threes. I'm not arguing about changing. It was a very high scoring game. It was a modern game. My point is there was no nonsense.
Well, hey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like Converse's, number one guy. So maybe he can wear some Chuck Taylors for you next time.
I'm just saying there was no nonsense. It was about
it was awesome.
The basketball.
It was all about the basketball for 3 days, and the basketball delivered. And it was awesome to be there.
Yeah, and you get to turn around and do it again in OKC on the 16th. And then, listen, the Celtics are awesome. There's obviously challengers in the West. There is a very real chance we see these teams again in June.
Well, and that was my biggest takeaway from the game is that, look, we've talked a lot about potential reasons to doubt the Cavs, and I'm not saying the Cavs are making the finals for sure, but after this game, the way they've played all throughout the season, I think especially winning the game the way they did with Donovan playing badly, with Evan Mobley having a monster game, doing stuff he simply was not doing in past years, Darius Garland having a huge game, Jared Allen playing with a different level of physicality, having a huge game. Like, they are clearly an inner circle title contender and have to be treated that way. And the doubts have been understandable about them. There's always doubts about teams that haven't broken through yet. But the way this season has gone, like, they have to be considered a real threat. And like that performance last night in a huge spot where, frankly, I think there was a lot more pressure on them than the Thunder, who I think are seen already as that kind of a team and just came off beating the Knicks and Celtics. That was a huge statement moment for the Cavs on their home court, fully healthy, ready to go, rested for the game, and they delivered in every way.
it's one thing to have two teams that are really playing well and they're top of the standings. There were 30 lead changes. 30.
8 ties, 30 lead changes. I don't think either team led by double digits. If they did, it was only for a second. It was
I don't
just
remember that they
awesome
did.
stuff from start to finish.
So the third quarter of this game, the Thunder won the third quarter 43-41. And the fourth quarter was enjoyable. And by the way, not a foul fest either. You know,
No.
I mean, there was some bad, you know, both teams had complaints about calls. There were some challenges that played it, but the end of the game it didn't take 45 minutes.
And yeah, neither team did lead by double digits, to be clear.
A cleanly played game. But in the third quarter of this game, like I said, the Thunder won the third quarter 43-41. That's obviously a modern, high tempo, high scoring.
And shocking for the Thunder to give up 41 in a quarter.
I agree. Well, we'll talk about that. If you watch, I would almost encourage you, if you have a way to watch, to go back and just watch the third quarter of this game, because the mastery that the two teams displayed in the third quarter, that 12 minutes of the teams working their systems, playing to their strengths, taking advantage of the other team's weakness, every single possession was in its own way kind of impressive. I mean, I think there might have been one or two where, like, you know, J-Dub dribbled the ball off his leg, went out of bounds or whatever. The Cavs made a bad pass, but high level competition, you know, the Cavs tight passing, tight player movement, the Thunder, you know, great rotational coverage and defense, even though they were getting beat because the Cavs, you know, are just really great moving the ball. High speed, getting back, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting to the mid range, creating angles, hitting tough shots with just, you know, he's so good at being able to change the trajectory of his shot, where he can, all the different angles that he can shoot at and still make it. It's extremely impressive. That third quarter.
You want me to read the stats quick?
Yeah.
So the Thunder scored 43 points, as you said. We're 18 for 26 from the field, 69%. Very nice. 15 for 18 on twos.
He did that for you, MacMahon.
Got to the line 5 times, only had 2 turnovers. Cavs went 15 for 26 from the field, 57%. Went 7 for 14 from 3. Also had 2 turnovers. Like, just ridiculous shot making on both sides. Like you said, hardly any mistakes throughout the quarter. Frankly, barely any stoppages. You know, there were a couple of fouls called in the quarter, but I mean, it was just breathless end-to-end stuff and just high-level shot making over and over again, especially in a quarter when Isaiah Hartenstein and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander both got their 4th foul in the first couple minutes, and the Cavs scored 25 points the first 6 minutes of the quarter. You're thinking, man, the Cavs might just run away with this thing. And then Jalen Williams, who had a fantastic game, totally bounced back from a rough game offensively against the Celtics on Sunday in another big spot. He was great and was a huge part of getting them back in the game in the third quarter when it looked like they're going to get out of it. It was just awesome stuff. And that quarter was a microcosm of how the whole game was played.
So I want to say one of my biggest takeaways from watching the Cavs play this game was that the Evan Mobley, Jared Allen combination, you know, I spent a lot of time last season on this pod and specifically in Cleveland, really emphasizing that I didn't think the Cavs could play effectively with them both out there. And all of the data points pointed to this. It pointed to the fact that if they had 3 shooters on the court, I kept saying 3
so 1-3-1,
1-3-1, 1-3-1-1, whatever. 3 shooters, one point guard, 1 big was the way for the Cavs to play. The data all backed it up. JB Bickerstaff did not listen to me. He played the 2 bigs throughout the year. They stumbled over each other quite a bit. They still reached the second round of the playoffs. Wasn't like they were a lottery team. And I was convinced after the year, I was like, they can't, you know, because Mobley and Jared Allen both were extension eligible, and the Cavs went ahead and extended them both for hundreds of millions. Between the two of them, I think it was $350 million.
And they gave themselves some wiggle room by doing the Jared Allen extension, as McMahon was going to say.
Though, but you're right.
Well, but they did it so they could trade him in theory at the deadline if they wanted to trade him. So they gave themselves some wiggle room. No, for sure. But
no, but when it happened, we
talked about it.
Note about the timing of it as opposed to the marketing timing in Utah.
And we talked the other day, you mentioned on Tuesday my story that ran Wednesday on the Wednesday pod ahead of the game on the comparisons between this team and the 2014-15 Warriors, the initial Warriors team, right? And one comparison that I didn't have in the story that I was thinking of last night while watching the game that annoyed me that I didn't think of was that Warriors team obviously had Steph and Clay as unbelievable generational all time, maybe the two greatest shooters of all time, right? Because they had those two guys, that allowed them to play two non-shooting bigs together a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously that season, the 2015-16 season, Draymond Green shot like 38% from three. The rest of his career, he's been a middling to bad shooter, right? And they played him next to Kevon Looney, Andrew Bogut, all these other non-shooting bigs. They could get away with it because those two guys were all-time great shooters, and because Draymond Green is a phenomenal passer and could take the ball out of the short roll from Steph Curry and make plays. And the difference with this Cavs team from last year and 2 years ago is Evan Mobley is so much more physical, playing with so much more confidence and so much more force that when he's getting the ball in that short roll now, he's zipping the ball all over the place and making fantastic plays. And that's why that pairing can work. Because in the past, like in that Knicks series 2 years ago, he would get the ball in the short roll and he wouldn't really know what to do with it, and nothing would happen. And last night, against the best defense in the league, that's a ball hawking team that's constantly creating turnovers, he's getting the ball in the short roll and hitting Jared Allen for dunks, kicking the ball out for threes, making every great pass. Jared Allen made a bunch of great passes too. And that was the key to them unlocking that defense and getting all these open shots. It was that passing inside. And Evan Mobley's maturation and growth in that area, that last night really shone through just how much better he's gotten this season. And that's what has allowed that two big lineup to work in ways it wouldn't before.
Yeah, well, they both had 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. And it was
just obliterated the Thunder inside all game.
Yeah. And I will say this, as the game was going on, and the Thunder were doing a terrific job to hang in there, and not even hang in there. It was a hell of a game. Yeah. But as you're watching Jared Allen just kill him on the boards, and Evan Mobley get in there and get his hands on stuff. And by the way, Isaiah Hartenstein had a good game. He had a very good game. His push shot was working great. He was very effective. But that there obviously Chet's lurking out there, and Chet's not going to be back.
There's a 7-1 guy. Yes, there's a 7-1 guy in street clothes. Who, by the way, went through a workout yesterday after shoot around. After the media left the court, he went out there and did some shooting. Mark Daigneault, before the game, got asked about it, and not shockingly, by Thunder standards, said, I'm not going to give you blow-by-blow updates on his recovery, but that he's progressing and doing fine. But yeah, like you felt the loss of Chet Holmgren in that game. And if you have him and Hartenstein out there against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, things probably look different. But it doesn't take away from the force those guys played with. And that has been a question about this team in the past. Like, are those guys going to be able to play with enough physicality and force inside like they did a couple years ago against the Knicks? And they just dominated the game inside. And that it really got summed up in that final possession with like 2 minutes to go in the game, where the Cavs had the ball for a minute, and it ultimately ended up with Evan Mobley scoring on the drive against Hartenstein, which is another great play by him. But that was created by those two guys just being all over the boards for a minute. Oklahoma City kept getting stops and couldn't get the rebound.
Yeah, and that's Oklahoma City's biggest flaw. That is the reason they, went out and gave Isaiah Hartenstein $87 million. But obviously when they did that, the idea was to always have a 7-footer on the floor and sometimes have 2 7-footers on the floor. And like you said, Chet is taking gradual steps. It's not like he's going to be back the next time these guys play. And
he won't be back next week. No.
In a week. But if they meet again down the road, Chet will be there. And it's going to be fascinating for the Thunder once he gets back to kind of see how exactly, it's going. Like, they're going to have to go through an adjustment period, even a trial and error period. It's going to be fascinating to see how they fit. But again, going back to the Cavs, we didn't think that Allen and Mobley fit at least at a high level, right? We thought, obviously, this is a team that has been a 50-win team, got to the second round of the playoffs. We thought they're going to have to break that up and get value for one of those, for Allen, to be frank, for them to take the next step. And clearly that was wrong. And a lot of that is just Mobley spreading his wings. Like, Bontemps, in your story, Donovan Mitchell said it. I talked to him recently when they came through Dallas, and he went out of his way to say, hey, as he put it, Evan Mobley that's the biggest difference in the team this year is this guy just kind of spreading his wings. And I mean, and he's a guy who there are times it's a late shot clock situation. All the pop, pop, pop stuff didn't work. And it's okay, Mobley, you've got the ball with 4 seconds on the shot clock. Go get a bucket.
Well,
And
the biggest play of the game, they drew up a play for Evan Mobley to get a bucket. Isaiah Hartenstein had 5 fouls, and they gave him the ball and said, go get a bucket. And he went against a really good interior defender, drove right into his chest and scored and made a huge play. And again, a year ago, that's not happening. That's a credit to Kenny Atkinson for instilling the confidence in him and giving him the freedom to play that way. And it's full credit to Evan Mobley for expanding his game and just playing with so much more confidence. And it's awesome to watch. Really fun.
Jackson had some stats about the Cavs offense in this game that Stats and Info came up with. The Cavs had 28 layups and dunks, most by any team against the Thunder this season. And if you watch the game, so many of those were from big to big passes. Or Allen and Mobley were finished. Allen and Mobley have been top 5 in total dunks over the last 2 or 3 years in the NBA. Last year Mobley had knee surgery and he missed 6 weeks, so maybe he didn't have the total, but certainly dunks per game over the last 3 years. I mean, that's the way the Cavs play anyway. But it was particularly effective against the Thunder when they could move Hartenstein away from the basket, and so the Cavs shot 13 of 16 on shots created from passes from Mobley and Allen together. And a lot of those were to each other. And, the Thunder do such a good job of applying pressure, and the Cavs would pass the ball through the pressure because they would go big to big and they couldn't
go over it.
Yeah, they would just go over it. And that's what I mean by the tight passing. Like the Cavs run an offense. One of their schemes is they bring up 2 guys. They'll bring up a whole bunch of guys together. They'll bring up 2 players. I go to Nate Duncan for the name of the set, but they bring up 2 players. It's a common set in the NBA. They bring up 2 players to the very top, and the point guard can go off a screen off either of them. But the point is that they get 6 guys.
Set.
It's not even a horns. Horns is when they're on the double high post. This is when they come all the way up, sort of standing side by side, and you have 6 guys all staying together. And the Cavs will force the opponent to all sort of crash in together, and then Mobley will pop out, and the ball will go to Mobley, and Mobley will distribute it before the defense can get reset. And he distributes it to the corner. He distributes it inside to Jared Allen, and it's just they do it very quick and very tight, and it's very hard to defend. And so I actually suspect next week when they play again in Oklahoma City, I would not be surprised if the Thunder have some defensive antidotes for that set, because that set was causing a lot of problems. But here's the other thing. Last night, the Cavs made 15 3-pointers in their at least 15 3-pointers in their 11th consecutive game. I mean, we are
more shooting now than they've had most of the season with Max Strus back.
Right. Strus had his best game by far.
Yeah, he was great. And I mean, and again, the thing that's so much fun to watch about the way the Cavs play, it's not this incredibly, I shouldn't say it's not incredibly complex, because that sounds like it isn't intricate, but they just play with an aggressiveness, like a controlled aggressiveness. It's like, we're going to play fast. We're going to get into our stuff. We're going to come off a screen. If we're open, we're going to shoot it. And Max Strus just kept coming off screens last night and was immediately going up and shooting it. And Darius Garland would get an open look and he would shoot it. And Donovan Mitchell, he didn't hit shots last night, but he played within the team and was getting clean looks and just missing them. But they play with this controlled aggressiveness and assertiveness, and there's no hesitation in what they do. They cut cleanly and strongly. They take shots the second they're open. And so for a team like the Thunder, for as good as they are on defense, we saw them against the second and third ranked offenses in the league, the Knicks and the Celtics, wear those teams down as the game went along. And I talked to Mark Daigneault before the game, and something he said to me that I thought was interesting, because I was talking about those halves, was he said, when I watch the Cavs, they do on offense what we do on defense. And they really put so much pressure on you as the game goes along that you eventually start to wear down. It's where these avalanches come from as the game goes along, right? And they were able to keep up throughout the game, but with the way they play, with the assertiveness and aggressiveness they play with on offense, it is very taxing. And it does remind me again of those Steph Warriors teams where like they're just constantly moving around and doing their thing. And you've got to be minding your P's and Q's for 48 minutes because if you slip for a couple seconds, they're cutting for a dunk, they're getting an open three, they're getting an easy shot somewhere. And to do what they did against the Thunder, like we talked about that Bucks game. Yeah, Giannis had a great game, but that was an offensive loss for the Thunder. To have a defensive loss in a game where Donovan Mitchell went 3 for 16,
It's
that
amazing.
is a shocking thing. And it's a huge credit to the way the Cavs are playing and to the growth of those other guys around Donovan Mitchell. Because it's like as all those guys said after the game, that's not a game that team wins last year. Like they're a much different team now.
After the Cavs came through Dallas, I told you guys, like seeing it up close, I was just astounded by how awesome the passing was. I looked up like passes just because like the ball feels like it's just pop, 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 pop. And I looked up on the NBA stat site, you can look up passes per game. I was shocked. The Cavaliers are a bottom 5 team in passes per game. So they don't necessarily pass the ball more. They don't pass the ball more than most teams. They just pass the ball better than most teams. They have to be one of the most effective passing teams in the league. And like you said, it's not like there are it's 8, 9, 10 passes because sometimes you're just moving the ball because you don't have an advantage. What they do is they create advantages and they capitalize on them
That's
quickly
right.
and effectively. And it's the thing about it is, especially with a guy like Donovan, who, he's been a big time scorer in the past, so is Darius Garland. Those guys aren't worried about putting up 28, 20, 30 points per game. They're whatever their numbers are is what they're going to be. And those guys set the tone for this being such an unselfish team that is just, again, this is right now as good an offensive team as we've ever seen.
All right. So speaking of that, after the game, Bontemps, I don't know if you want to talk about whatever you heard in the locker room. But there was an interesting quote. We haven't talked about, MacMahon just mentioned Darius Garland. Garland also had a good game. He had 18 points. He also had the basket that pretty much clinched it. Put him up by 7 with 30 seconds left. He was just a great I think it was left-handed. In my head, it was, remember, left-handed. Just left-handed drive, score in traffic. And after the game, I don't know if I'm summarizing. It was in your story, I know. Well, what did he say?
What did Garland say?
Yeah, I thought it was in your story.
It was not in my story, but
it should have been.
About him being an all-star, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, the funnier part of that was he pretty reluctantly wanted to talk about the all-star game, and Donovan Mitchell, and to a much greater extent, Tristan Thompson, were standing on the edges of the scrum, screaming. Tristan going through the list of opponents that he had smoked in his term over the past few weeks and making it very clear that he should be an all-star, to which Darius eventually said, yes, I would like to be an all-star, but I'm tired of these guys
that was the quote. I'm glad you had that
it.
context. So I read was the quote was like, I'm usually pretty humble, but I'd like to be an all-star. I think what did he say? I deserve it.
Basically it was like, yeah, I try to be humble, but I definitely think I should be an all-star. But like it came after those two guys were shouting at him for 2.5 minutes to say it.
So. I think I told you guys when they came through Dallas, I talked to Donovan for a little bit after, in the locker room. And as we're walking out, he's like, hey, one more thing. Like, we got to have 3 all-stars, right? Like, you think we're going to get 3 all-stars? And again, if this team is on pace to win 70 plus games, at a certain point, wins is a stat that has to be heavily weighed in all-star consideration. It has to be.
100%.
If they're on pace to win 70 plus games, they're not going to have multiple all-stars. I mean, come on.
I had a similar conversation with them last week in San Francisco, where Tristan in particular, when I walked in the locker room, he started shouting at me We got 3 All-Stars, bro.
The media has a 25% vote for the starters.
That's
we
right.
don't have anything to do with the reserves.
That's right.
Well, and that's where it gets, for coaches, listen, if you want winning to be the most important thing, then treat winning like it's the most important thing.
Well, they usually do. They usually do.
Well, they don't, because, like, for example, and this is where we got into the other day, and we're going to get into the All-Star stuff in a second. This is a way to lead into it. Rudy Gobert, a couple years, was the best defensive player in the league, or one of them. It didn't make the All-Star team.
When the
on a
Jazz
really
are
good
winning
team.
a lot of games.
Right. And so my thought over the past few weeks is that I could see either Evan Mobley or Darius Garland, or both, potentially running into that same problem, particularly if some coaches voted for one of them as the All-Star and some voted for the other. I'm just going to say, after that game last night on that stage with the way he played, Evan Mobley better be on the All-Star team.
Oh,
Like,
look
I
who's
don't know
coming
if
around
they're.
on Evan Mobley. Look
Hey,
at
listen,
the man spends a few hours in Cavs corner, and
hey, listen,
I tell you what,
he got a great meal on
he's got some wine and gold
Tuesday
underwear
night,
on.
and it changed everything.
I did have a good meal on Tuesday night, but listen, I just call it like I see it. And the bottom line is he's gotten dramatically better. And that, like, he would not have had that performance a year ago.
He's got
Wouldn't
a lot
happen.
better than last week, because last week when I brought it up, he's averaging 18 and 8. I don't know.
No, what I said was I think he could make the All-Star team and arguably should make the All-Star team, but I didn't know if he'd get voted in. That game last night, that was the kind of performance he needed to have to show the league the growth he's made. Like, that was one of the many reasons why it was a huge opportunity for the Cavs. And he stepped up and delivered in a massive way.
Winnie, take the wheel.
All right, so let's talk about the All-Star situations. By the way, my flight was just canceled, MacMahon.
Oh no!
I'm not totally surprised. Look out! Is it getting worse out the window there?
I mean, it's by Texas standards, this is one hell of a blizzard.
Yeah. All right, we'll deal with that after the pod. All right. Anyway, so as a quick reminder, I know this is basic, but it helps to just remind there are only 12 All-Stars per conference.
This is like any other award. If you're going to put somebody in, you got to take somebody out.
That's the way things work.
So,
well, people don't always think about it that way, though.
Yeah. And as a reminder, let's just tell you where the voting was. There's only been one returns, and it's not.
There will be new returns after the pod comes out today, but
really? Okay.
But generally, they are basically the same as the prior ones. I think there's only one potential real change this week.
We always have the best timing, like last pod where we talked about how rough things are for the Mavericks and they light the Lakers up by 21.
I've done enough of these all-star voting ones.
But Bontemps said Booker wasn't playing well and he scored 40 that night. They did lose.
They did lose to the Hornets, which is hard to do.
Yes. Well.
All right.
Partially right.
Anyway, so Giannis, Tatum, and Towns were the front court starting positions. I don't think that's
very hard to see that changing in the East.
LaMelo Ball and Donovan Mitchell were the guards. Lillard was tight on Mitchell, but
it will be interesting to see in the East. Like, LaMelo, I think, is probably going to stay ahead in the fan vote. Wouldn't surprise me. And he'll probably end up being number one in the fan vote, which is half the voting. However, despite the fact he's putting up big numbers, it'll be very interesting to see how many votes he gets from both media and players, because Dame, obviously,
he's not an all-star starter.
Well, listen, I'm just saying, Dame, I'm not sure Dame will make the team if he's not voted in. He's going to be a borderline. There's going to be several borderline cases in the East. And if he's sitting there in third in the fan voting and he gets it, he's probably going to get, I would guess Damian Lillard's going to get more player votes than LaMelo Ball. And he could get more media votes. Like, that will be that spot, I think, is potentially up in the air. Obviously, Donovan and the three front court guys, I think, are pretty well locked into 4 of the 12 spots.
Well,
whether they're starters or reserves, I mean, we think all 4 of those guys are making it for sure, right?
I agree. Yes.
Let's go through the teams just through the conference and just sum up who's in the pool, and then we can figure it out from there. So let's say all 4 guys for the Cavs, just for giggles to start with.
Yeah.
How many guys from the Celtics? Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White.
Well, Derek White has never been an all-star, and there's certainly a call because of how important of a role he's played. That's certainly something that they believe. Yeah.
So let's start with that. So there's three
Celtics
more.
can't get 3 if the Cavaliers don't have 3.
Let's
I
just create the pool and then we'll go from there. Knicks, we're going to say Towns and Brunson, right? Probably nobody else.
Knicks Brunson in December. Mikal Bridges.
Yes. Orlando would have had potentially a couple guys, but they both unfortunately got hurt. Though Paolo Banchero coming back either today or tomorrow, which is very good news. Giannis and Dame, obviously nobody else from Milwaukee. So we're up to 11 possible players. Anybody from Indiana? Probably not.
No,
I don't think so.
Tyler Hero.
Yeah.
Is certainly going to be in consideration. He's had a fantastic year. That's 12.
Bam Adebayo has not had a good year.
No, he's not going to be in the mix. Cade Cunningham deserves to be in the mix. He's had a great year. Trae Young deserves to be in the mix. He's had a great year. I don't think Zach LaVine is in the mix.
What about Jalen Johnson? I don't think Jalen Johnson's going to make it, but if you're moving past the Hawks,
I think if they get one in, Trey's going to get in.
I agree with that. And there is an argument.
But I'd put him on the list.
Player. I'll say this. LaVine, I think you've got to put LaVine in there. The guy's averaging over 23 points a game on awesome efficiency.
So let's just put him in there. So we've got 16 with Zach LaVine. Maybe Tyrese Maxey from Philly. Maybe. The other two guys aren't. But maybe him. And then LaMelo. So if we're just going like all the possible candidates, there's 18 guys for 12 spots.
Okay.
So then we start cutting guys out from there. So guard-wise, you've got Donovan, Garland, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Brunson, Dame, Tyler Hero, Cade, Trae Young, Zach LaVine, Maxey, and LaMelo. That's 12 guys for 6 spots.
I mean, Donovan's obviously going to make it. Brunson to me is a must.
Brunson's definitely making it.
Jaylen Brown to me is a must. Again,
I would think he makes it.
To me, I'm taking Garland, Cade Cunningham, and I think Trae Young.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with any of those. No Hero?
I think Hero's having a good season. I don't think he's having a better season than any of the guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know. I might have him in there over Trae. He's been unbelievable.
I hear you. And, I will just say at a certain point, we've got to recognize that Trae Young is leading the league in assists by almost 3 full assists per game.
He's having a great year.
I mean, the guy's averaging 12.2 assists per game. That's like for a team that, like the Hawks are hanging in there. He hadn't had a good shooting season even, but the guy's averaging 22.6 points and 12.2 assists per game. Those are some serious numbers. And again, it's not like the Hawks are a team that's near the bottom of the pack. Like they're right in the thick of things in that play. I kind of call it play in plus section of the standings.
Play in plus. That'll be Adam Silver's just like, good idea. What if we could have a play in plus?
Like right now, I'm talking about the group that is kind of who's going to be in the play-in, who's going to avoid it. Like we're looking at between 6 right now. As we speak, they're tied for 8th in the standings, but they're a half game out of 6.
Well, and the way it's funny. The more I've thought about this, the way it shook out, and Jaylen Brown, I thought was at a guard spot, so he's actually at a forward spot.
Yeah,
but the if you just do the math, right? There's so many guards in the mix that the more I think about it, I actually think the third Cavalier that's more likely to make the All-Star team is Jared Allen and Darius Garland, because there's 3 starting front court spots and 3 reserve front court spots. So you got 6 bigs to get in the game. And, once you get past Tatum, Giannis, Towns, and Jalen and Mobley, that's 5. The only other big that we named was Jared Allen. So that's 6 spots right there.
I will say this. If the Cavaliers end up with 4 All-Stars, I wouldn't cry about it. You remember that Hawks team that was number 1 seed? Didn't those Hawks have 4 All-Stars?
Kenny Atkinson was an assistant on that team.
They were the last team to have 4 All-Stars, and a certain player on the Cavs who I mentioned earlier, who might have played against that team in the playoffs, may have brought that up in the locker room as in a derisive manner in terms of whether these guys should get 4 All-Stars this year. But my point is, this is why it's, I think, instructive to actually go through and look at the spots, because a lot of this just comes down to like roster math in terms of spots. And there's a lot of front court spots, and there's way more guards than bigs. And so, like, I wouldn't have thought Jared Allen was going to make it before I did this exercise. And now, especially with Paolo and Franz being banged up this year, and like Pascal Siakam's had a fine year, but I don't think he's making it.
Well, and Adebayo's had a down year.
Bam hasn't had a good year. It's like, once you start looking at the math, it's like, all right, these guys, and to your point, Brian, maybe Jalen Johnson does have a chance to maybe sneak into a spot, but I think Jared Allen's got a really good chance to make it now.
This is where the Magic have, like, Franz was absolutely playing at an all-star level. I mean, arguably an all-NBA level, but he's been out for a while. I don't know when he's going to be back. Paulo just hasn't played enough games to be an all-star this year. Nobody questions whether he's an all-star talent.
Right. And Joel and Paul George have either been injured or disappointed.
Yeah, those guys can't be all-stars this year.
No.
Jalen Johnson is, he's a legit candidate.
Okay, well, that illustrates, we'll talk more about this as it goes along, but it illustrates the challenge, that exists. Okay, so in the West, my computer is freezing here.
So are the runways at DFW.
In the West, the front court leaders in the voting are Jokic, Durant, and LeBron. I don't think that's changing. The guards are Shea and Luka, with Steph tight behind Luka.
Steph will be starting with Shea.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know that Luka's going to even be available, but I really don't know if he's going to be available by then.
Yeah, I think we should just write him off. It not obviously deserves to make it, but I think the injury is probably going to knock him
frankly,
out.
this year he doesn't deserve to make it.
Well,
he's
still an all-star.
His numbers aren't ideal
he hasn't
for
played
him.
a lot of games.
He's not right. There's a difference between deserves to and will make it. Like he was having an all-star year before he got hurt. But we'll just remove him just for.
All right, we'll just put him aside.
So Steph is going to get into, like, those are going to be the 5 starters.
Yeah, the games in San
front
Francisco.
Court guys.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. They might invite Steph.
Right. So those 5 guys: Jokic, Durant, LeBron, Steph, Shea, they're all going to make it. So for the other 7 spots, here are the potential candidates. Got Jalen Williams with the Thunder. Like, man, you're the Rockets guy. What Rockets are going to be up for consideration?
Şengün's their all-star candidate.
So there's another one. Jaren Jackson, the only one for Memphis, right?
Yeah, because Ja's missed as much time as he has.
It's hard.
By the way,
he's missed a lot of time.
Little note there: Ja upgraded to questionables. That's obviously a sign he's coming back. He has missed exactly 17 games. So All-NBA is not off the table for him at this point.
So we've got Jaren Jackson, Şengün, Jalen Williams. Kyrie was going to be an all-star. I would say.
Well, let's see when he's back on the floor. But
let's leave him out for now, just because of he could be wiped out because of the injury.
I don't like leaving him out.
No, let's leave him in for now, and then if he misses more time.
Well, sure, then we'll do that. So we'll leave him in. So there's a 4th guy. Denver has nobody. Anthony Davis.
Nobody other than Jokic.
Hold on, Russell
right?
Westbrook.
I mean, nobody else. Sure, yes, our guy Russell Westbrook.
Hey, Russ is having a pretty nice season, by the way.
He's been fine.
For a minimum guy, he's been great. Go on.
That's true.
Sure.
For minimum.
So Anthony Davis is 5. Are we putting anybody on the list for the Clippers?
I mean,
If we do, it's Norm Powell. He's not.
I agree. Let's put Norm Powell on there just out of respect to the year he's having.
he's
That's six.
he's on he's just behind Devin Booker in votes.
We've got Anthony Edwards is 7.
Mhm.
Nobody else with the Warriors.
I want to mention that French dude at some point.
Well, I'm just going down the standings. So the next guy is Victor. He's obviously going to make it. So that's 8. De'Aaron Fox, the only guy with the Kings, right? That's
Mhm.
9. Devin Booker is 10. So you got 10 guys for 7 spots.
Not as bad as the East. Not as tough as the East.
There's less candidates because of these injuries. So guard wise, for the 2 guard spots, we've got, what do they have Jalen Williams as in the voting? Because he's a forward. Okay, so we've got Kyrie, Ant.
It doesn't really matter. Do they have to adhere to anything?
That's why it matters. It's
okay.
There's two
That's right.
two guard reserves, 3 big reserves, and then 2 wild cards for the 7 spots.
That's right. So
Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox, Anthony Edwards, and Kyrie Irving. I would say as of now, the two guard spots would be Ant and Kyrie, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, Ant is definitely making it.
I mean, Ant's an obvious one, and again, like, I don't want to sit here and we know Kyrie's going to miss a couple more games, at least a few more games, at least. I don't know if it's going to be an extended period.
If we're assuming he's going to be back sometime in the near future. He was having a tremendous season. He would be the other guard if we're knocking Luke out of the mix.
Unless he's out for an extended period, he is having an all-star season.
Right. So let's say those 2 guys are making it. Obviously, we've knocked Luke out of the mix. So then for these 3 front court spots, I would say, so we've got the guys we mentioned are Victor, Anthony Davis, Jaren Jackson, Şengün, and Jalen Williams. So Victor and AD, I would say, will make it. And then who's the third guy?
The Thunder have to have multiple all-stars.
I agree. I think doing this, it comes down to him or Jaren Jackson, I think, who's had a really great year, and Memphis is 3rd in the West and has had a ton of injuries.
Yeah, to me, Jalen Williams is the more deserving guy. You know, he's the number 2 scorer on a team that's are the Thunder bumped off a 70-win pace at a near 70-win pace?
They're just below it after losing.
Right. I mean,
I think we could put both of them in. I would say Memphis deserves an all-star and Jalen Williams deserves to be the second one.
Yeah.
So if we give one of those guys one wild card spot, the 12th and final spot would come down to Devin Booker, De'Aaron Fox. I forgot to mention Norm Powell earlier. Norm Powell and Şengün.
Unless Luke is healthy and available, and then he probably gets it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if Luke is healthy, that's different. And Kyrie could open up a spot if he's not available or if he ends up being hurt going the other way. But, I mean, again, to your point, if you're rewarding winning, like Şengün's team is 2nd in the West, and nobody was predicting that.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you said about Booker the other day. Booker is still having a very strong season.
He's having a good season by NBA standards. He's not having a good season by Devin Booker standards.
Well, that's true, but he's being judged.
And his team has been a disaster.
It's really hard to give a sub 500 team 2 all-stars and a team in second place none.
But it's also hard to me. We've also seen repeatedly that when it comes to the coach making your first all-star team, the bar is higher.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, my point is, like, at some point, the standings matter, winning games matter. That's supposed to be like the whole point of the entire sport is to win. And I think all-star selections should reflect that.
Yeah, a lot of people respect Devin Booker a lot.
Oh, yeah.
We all respect Devin Booker a lot. That doesn't change the fact that he's having a subpar season. by his standards. Like
I don't think
I
anybody.
mean, Brian, what faces are you making? He's shooting 42% from the field. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know. I mean,
He's having the worst season he's had in several years. It's
yeah.
not an assault on his character. He's still an awesome player. Anybody would love to have him on their team. He's just not being. I mean, look, I know that Mike Brown just got fired. De'Aaron Fox is having a better season than Devin Booker. Like,
De'Aaron Fox is having an excellent season.
so like
I agree.
if you're picking one of the two of them, De'Aaron Fox should get in ahead of him. Like, but to me, again, the reason why this exercise matters, I think, is because you have to look at the puzzle pieces of putting the roster together. And going into doing this, I didn't think Jalen Williams, I thought it was going to be hard for him to make the team based off the fit of the roster. Looking, obviously, because there's a lot of really good players in the West, but you look at the way this breaks down, the combination of his play and the Thunder's record, I think he's got a much better chance of making the team than I would have initially thought. Like, he should be in the 12 guys. And obviously his play has merited it. And I think the way that breaks down, I think he's got a really good shot to make it.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. If you're a Kings fan or, from a certain part of the world, you could say, hey, put Sabonis's numbers next to Alperen Şengün's numbers, and Sabonis's are better across the board. Like, he is shooting much better from the floor. He's averaging more points. He's averaging more rebounds, the most rebounds in the Western Conference. He's averaging more assists. Again, one guy's on a team that's second in the West. One guy's on a team that's scrapping to get into the play-in.
Right. That's where it'll be interesting to see what the coaches do on some of this stuff. Because you're right, Brian, there is a lot of stickiness with this voting historically. So, like, would it be stunning if Devin Booker made the All-Star team and Jalen Williams didn't? No. Like, it wouldn't stun me if he got voted in.
Oh,
I'm not saying that is deserved, but like, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen a guy who's made the All-Star team a bunch make it over somebody who hasn't in in a situation where you could potentially argue multiple ways.
The thing that would be stunning there is, like, as we sit here right now, Oklahoma City has a 6-game cushion.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. I go back to the Rudy Gobert thing. Like, the coaches have historically not always rewarded, like, I'm not saying intangible stuff, but like stuff that's not box score stats, whether it's winning or like elite defensive players or whatever. Like, that hasn't tended to be. And I also think Brian's point is right, that there is a lot of stickiness when it comes to this stuff. And you just sort of plug guys in that are all-stars. They're just seen as all-star caliber players. And Devin Booker is seen as that kind of player.
The Thunder's cushion on the second place team is the same as the difference between 2 and 9 in the West.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you. Yeah.
By the way, the Cavs, look at the Cavs cushion in the East. It's 6.
They're 5.5, and that's with the Celtics still on pace to win almost 60.
A lot of games.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, the Thunder have a 6-game cushion over the Rockets, and the difference between the Rockets and the 9th seed Warriors is 6 games.
If everything was
was
as it should be, and I like to see new blood in the All-Star game, Şengün should be in the All-Star game, and Jalen Williams should be in the All-Star game.
Yeah. I mean, now that they're playing like shirts versus skins.
Yeah, I don't even care about the game. Whatever. I mean, it's more about at this point, it's more about the honor than it is about it has been for a while.
Yeah.
So in the pickup game that I play in on Sunday mornings, they were talking about playing sideways and having 2 games run at the same time instead of playing full court.
That would actually be hilarious.
Well, also, I'm all for it because that's less running for me, and Lord knows I'm running. But I'm like, you know what? I told the guys, I said, I think that's the NBA's new All-Star format. They're just going to have 2 games running sideways at the same time.
Listen, that sounds ridiculous, but when I look at this quote unquote plan, I'm having a hard time of ruling anything out.
No, what you do is 2 games running sideways, and I don't know if you're counting 1s and 2s. That's the pickup rules, which is stupid because, like, can't we all count 2 and 3? It's not that hard of math, anyways. But you do that sideways and then the winners of that have to play a full court game.
This is, by the way, as a quick aside, this is one of the problems I have with the 3-on-3 game. There's a lot of things I've tried as a supporter of FIBA international basketball, I've tried to get into 3-on-3. I've pretty much rejected it because what's ridiculous about it is that the 2 counts twice as much. The 3 counts as 2. It's twice as much.
Hate that.
It's ridiculous. And secondly, when you get free throws, they all count as 1.
What?
You get fouled. You get 2 free throws. It counts as 2 points. Not if you're shooting a 2. Like if you're shooting anywhere. If you foul somebody on there when they're taking it back.
Oh my gosh! So like prime James Harden would have been unbelievable as a 3-on-3 player.
We'll take him right now. The Americans haven't won the gold the last 2 Olympics. We'll take him right now. So
that's true. Anyway,
forget about that. This was a good discussion. I actually helped this help clarify it for me. I think if you're a Cavs fan, I don't know if you're going to get what you want. But they're going to get 2. I don't know.
I mean, look, like I said, I come out of this thinking they're going to get 3. And the question is, are they going to get 4? Because I think there's just not enough front court spots to keep Jared Allen out of the game. I wouldn't have thought Jared Allen was going to make it for doing this. But like, you name those 6 guys, Towns, Giannis, Tatum, Mobley, Allen, and Jaylen Brown. There's really not another person for those 6 spots that I think is going to have a real strong case to be ahead of them. So I think, and like I say by default, I don't mean that critically of Jared Allen. It's just like you have 6 spots to fill. You have 6 deserving candidates. There's really not a 7th one. So
I'll tell you what, there's nothing in life like getting a compliment from the USWB.
I will say this.
I mean, the Cavs aren't going to care if they get him in the All-Star game. I just mean, again, it's why it's important to look at it with the positional stuff, because it factors into who actually makes the team. It's not just pick 7 reserves.
I mean, real talk here, MacMahon. Bontemps has seen the Cavs play this year several times. I know he's gone to Cleveland once. I know he was out in San Francisco.
Gone to Cleveland multiple times.
Yeah, and he's seen them play multiple times. He was, maybe he was just mocking me, but he would mock me about Cavs Corner.
Oh yeah.
He goes to this game in Cleveland. Oh. He comes out of it calling the Cavs bona fide and making a case for 4 All-Stars.
Who picked up the check at dinner? Who was
I didn't go to dinner with any. I didn't go to any dinner with any Cavs people.
I'm just saying. I think a Clevelander might have picked up your check. No way,
Clevelander did not pick up my check. But look, I call it like I see it, and the Cavs are 32-4. They're dominating the league, and again, there's 6 players for 6 spots. So I thought Darius Garland had a better chance to be the 3rd guy. The fact that Jared Allen, I think, is looking at this close to a lock to get on the team just based off the numbers. I think they got a really good shot at getting 4 guys.
That would be something in the modern day.
And you know what else is something in the modern day? Being on
73 wins.
Yeah. Yeah. So this Cavaliers season is certainly something.
Well, I still think we're at least 3 weeks away from that vote. So
So the second round of voting will be Thursday afternoon. Will be released Thursday afternoon. The 3rd round of voting will be next Thursday. The starters will be announced on the voting ends Monday the 20th. The starters will be announced on the 23rd, and then the reserves are announced on the 30th. It's 5 straight Thursdays.
All right. Well, I learned a lot from this podcast. Thank you. Good job, Bontemps.
Oh,
try.
I didn't teach you anything.
Yeah, always you do. You taught me how Dallas punts on when they get a little bit of weather. Actually, it's not surprising at all. MacMahon, you told me days ago, if you're going to come, you better come Wednesday. I just couldn't come, and this was not surprising. So, listen, if Ohio State wins on Friday, it won't matter. Thank you to Jackson, our producer.
Welcome.
Thank you. I don't care. I'm not a crazy fan. Whatever.
But no, he's not a crazy fan at all. If people think the Cavs Corner is a thing, Brian's Ohio State fandom is a far bigger thing.
Yeah, you ought to see.
I'm a rational, realistic fan.
Cavs get a corner.
No, you're not.
A whole block.
No, you're not. You're a dyed-in-the-wool Ohio State University fan.
I am not I'm an Ohio State fan, but I am not an irrational Ohio State fan, of which there are many. I do want to just say before we go, this is not just passing. I'm honestly really truly upset and hurt by what's happening in Los Angeles. There are so many people that we know who are teammates here and friends who are having their lives affected by this. And look, we talk about the NBA, but it's hurtful and sad, and to see the footage of Pacific Palisades, which is one of the most beautiful communities in the U.S., and what's happened there. Just want to say nothing. There's nothing I can do. I can't make the flames go away, but it's definitely affected all of us. So I don't know. I just hope we get some good news from our teammates here, because it's been a lot of bad news.
Yeah, it's just been awful to see. I mean, my cousin graduated from Pepperdine Law in the spring, and we had lunch at one of the places that has burnt down, and drove up the Pacific Coast Highway, and like it's an incredible place, and it's just obviously been
on a personal
horrific
level,
to see what's going on.
Two of the places I mean, Lahaina is one of my favorite places in the world, and that was just absolutely devastating to see what happened there. And now Pacific Palisades, which I don't know as well, but just really the whole Pacific Palisades, Malibu area is just a special place, and it's been badly damaged. And but beyond that, it's just the people that we know. So I know that there are people in our NBA family, not to mention many other people, who are suffering. So it is definitely on my mind, and I wish there's something I could do. But thank you to Jackson.
Hopefully this gave you a brief respite from it.
Yes, hopefully so. All right. Thank you, MacMahon. Thank you, Bontemps. Thank you for watching, listening to Hoop Collective. We'll talk to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.